Welcome to episode 4 of the Year of Love podcast. I'm your host, Alison Wu. Welcome to the fleeing snow and winter edition from Pennsylvania. We are in beautiful Anna Maria Island, where it is glorious and 72 degrees. So, on this podcast, we love to bring you tools that you can use for your life. We also want to feature people who are living lives that they love. Today's guest brings both of these things to bear. So Elisabeth Grace actually took her philosophy degree from Wellesley and ended up launching on parallel paths a phenomenally successful career in television advertising, while also becoming a very well-respected astrologer. Elisabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alison. Oh my goodness gracious, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Thrilled, because one of the things I absolutely love about you is, we're all living in a hectic time in the world with a lot of news happening over the last number of years. And I found your blog from a fellow news colleague who pointed out that this movement in the world and the things that were happening actually had a pattern that you could track to astrology. And there was somebody really thinking about that, and you were that person.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. The astonishing synchronicity of planetary patterns and the headlines that run across the wires on a daily basis. I discovered that I was working as a local promo producer for WNBC in New York, and I was the gal who wrote "Tonight at 11, here's the top story," right?
Right.
So whatever, and I noticed, because I've always been interested in astrology, that since I was 9 years old, and read Linda Goodman's Sun Signs. Exactly. I cannot tell you how many astrologers of a certain age, that is the book that lights the fire. So I'd always done that, but they didn't have a degree in astrology at Wellesley College, so I had to do something else. So I ended up not making the news, but making you want to see the news. And I noticed that the planetary patterns, and the theory of astrology is the flow of planetary patterns. Astrology is a symbolic language. Okay, like any language, it is created by the consciousness of the people who use it, and it evolves as the people who use the language evolve. Like the English that we speak today is very different from the English that you would hear in Chaucer's time, for example. Our language has evolved. And so astrology evolves. It's a language. It has symbolisms. Why do words mean anything? Well, we give them meaning. You understand what I'm saying because you speak a language called English, and we all agree that what I'm saying has meaning. So astrology is like that. So so what is that? What does the language express? Well, what do you want to talk about? If you want to have a really in-depth conversation about snow in great detail, you might want to learn Inuit, where they have lots of words for snow, as opposed to Swahili. Maybe they don't have a lot of words for snow, or something, or tropical, where there's no snow at all, right? So astrology is a language that allows us to have a conversation about human experience through space and time. So it allows us to talk about when is it going to happen and what is happening in a language. So we use these symbols that if I say, the sun is conjunct Saturn, like that's an astrological jargon thing. The planet, the sun and Saturn are coming together. They're going to meet up this week. All right, what does that mean? That's a symbolic statement. Well, to somebody who's following patterns in the news, it tells an astrologer who follows those things that we're probably going to hear some pretty heavy news this week about leaders, and there's a weightiness, there's a gravitas to what's happening this week. We would see that in the headlines. Okay, So the astrologer's challenge is to not be talking in jargon, because most people don't muggles people do not understand it, but to be able to talk about it in plain English.
Exactly, and make it more practical.
And
so
make
that
it more
people
practical.
understand.
So I wouldn't even talk about what the pattern is to a muggle, someone who doesn't speak astrology. I would just say, this is a week where there is a sense of gravitas and to watch to things that are being initiated this week. And there is a lot of energy this week, I would also say, to get things started. We just had a new moon. We have a new lunar year. It's a lot of energy. You can feel it, and you would see it in the news to move forward.
So it's a great kind of framework of understanding just how we're at this place. Obviously, yes, we just had the Chinese Lunar New Year, right? On the new moon on Tuesday. But then, of course, you see the headlines in the news and what's happening with the buildup of troops and the movement there. I mean, there's an element, however, of predictive nature then also to astrology, or maybe where the patterns will go based on some of that movement. One of the things we wanted to talk about was just looking at this first quarter. You talk about people getting things started, right? How do we tap into that energy to then harmonize our own lives and our own choices with that energy? Like, how should we be thinking about this first quarter?
So this first quarter, meaning we're talking January, February, March.
Right.
Okay. Define our terms, because in astrology we would say we should be talking about spring, because that's how the astrological new year is spring, the seasons. But we're going to work off the other calendar. So January, February, March. January was a period of review for people. People who are ready to rush into the new year with all their resolutions may have been frustrated, because we had, there were two planets that have to do with our values and our mindset, how we think, what and who, what, and how we need to love. And those planets were moving backwards in the sky. Translation. What does it mean? Translation into English. Okay, so a Mercury retrograde, which I think many of your listeners might know that term, because that's pretty, people know, well, Mercury's retrograde, my computer's going to die, the world's, all that stuff. All right. So it was a time for reviewing your thinking and ideas that you implemented over the last 3 months. And we had another planetary pattern, which doesn't happen very often, which was Venus retrograde. Venus is how, who, what we need to love. So this suggests we need to look with extreme intensity, because of other patterns that I won't go into, about our values. How, it was a good time to look at your financial plan. It was a good time to look at your aesthetic choices. It was very interesting that in the news, like Minnie Mouse has a new outfit and the M&Ms have new shoes, right?
That's right.
Isn't that interesting that and the Washington football team has a new name?
Right.
They've gone through this review of these things, and they're like, okay, we are now something different. We have evolved. We've changed our values. We've changed because our values have changed, and so what we're putting out to the world has changed. You might look on personal levels. You might look at your relationships and go, is this person really reflecting my true values? So, you have people sometimes decisions that are hasty, because they're like, oh my God, I just realized this is terrible, and they rush out of things. So that's another, I'm getting a bit off track here. I apologize.
So, but that's a good point for January, right? A lot of those planets
for January. So
January
was, it should have been it was an apt time for a review of your values and your thinking. Very interesting that we had, people starting to ban books in the news, because people are looking at, well, is this thought, does it reflect me? And some people are going, no, it doesn't. And you're like, okay. So then everybody has to talk about that. So now in February, we have Mercury, the planet of communication and thought is at a virtual standstill right now. If you looked at Mercury from planet Earth, it wouldn't be moving from our perspective. I mean, it is moving, but from our perspective. So it's interesting that as I am speaking to you today, like even the words that I'm, that are coming out of my mouth, I'm like, it's challenging to pull them out. And that's reflecting the energy of the planets today. So Mercury is going to turn direct on Thursday. That's today at 11:12 p.m. So we're going to need a few days to get our minds working back up to speed. And what may happen this month is that we will still be reviewing some of the adjustments that we needed to make in January. We don't really start moving full speed ahead until March.
Okay.
Even though the planets are moving forward, but they still have to catch up to where they were before they started moving backwards.
So there's a certain momentum they have to
there's
get
a momentum, and
rhythm.
it's like, and it's, like we are trained we grow up in this world, I think, and the values of our particular, in this country, it's like go, 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 go. Well, the planetary patterns do not do this. They move forward from our perspective, and then they go back. We're not programmed to be moving forward. Like, look at you, it's Mercury retrograde, and there you are, you're taking a break.
Yes.
You've taken a retreat. You are in flow. You are in flow this week to take the time to just relax, recreate. You've done the absolute appropriate thing, maybe without even thinking about it.
Yes, it wasn't conscious, but I will tell you that I was supposed to leave on Saturday, and we had a terrible snowstorm in the Northeast, and my ticket got moved to Sunday because our flight got canceled. So you're right. I was expecting delays though. So that was
right.
a good thing. Everything I booked was with contingencies so that I could, travel accordingly.
So when you know about the planetary patterns, so this is how things can be helpful. When you know about the planetary patterns, now the planetary patterns don't make people do things. I mean, you want to get in that mindset. The mindset of, the cycles, you can always choose how to respond to what is presented, the opportunities and challenges. So you being mindful of Mercury is retrograde, I know enough about astrology to know that my travel plans and my documents might go through a bit of there might be some radio static. And so you plan accordingly. You book flexibility. That's the way to use awareness of astrology, that astrology is a tool. It's a really good thing to know about. It's not necessarily a belief system, it's not a religion. It's a tool for understanding how and when and what is likely to happen based upon the needs, because I'm a modern psychological astrologer. So I'm looking at these patterns as they're telling us what we need to do. If you know what somebody needs to do, then when an opportunity or a challenge presents itself, you have a pretty good idea of what they're likely to decide based on what they need.
Right. Great point.
That makes sense?
Totally makes sense.
Everybody with me? Are there any questions from the audience?
Well, I would ask you this then. So you said that it'll take a while for Mercury to really get going. Is there anything else we should be doing in February that should help us move things along?
Anything else we should be doing? We'll see. Generally speaking, I'm reluctant to talk about too many generalizations because astrology is unique to, everybody has a unique horoscope, right? So, and it's very specific. It's more than just a sun sign. Things that are true for everybody born under the sign of Taurus. This is impossible because there are so many moving parts in a horoscope. And many people are not aware of that, how complex the dynamics are. So that my point is that if you really want to use astrology for you personally, you should get to know your horoscope or find somebody who can explain it to you in plain English so they can tell you how things are likely to present themselves for you. But in general, we've got a lot of energy this week to go out and initiate, but we are cautioned by Mercury, which is kind of our ideas and communications that are kind of, they're in a bit of a holding pattern today. As we move into next week, there is a tremendous continuation of the energy of action. People are moved to do things this month that are practical and highly efficient. And that's the general, that's for the whole month. I won't get into the astrology of what the jargon is, but that's the energy that's here. And so I'm going to stop and ask for feedback if there's anything else.
No, I think that's great.
And what I'm doing, I'm looking aside as I'm looking at my little calendar here.
No, we're going to come back to this difference between the broader context of the general patterns versus the individual, because I think what you talked about was really important. We're going to come back to that. Let's close out and just talk a little bit about March, just so people can kind of plan ahead and think about what's the general direction.
So general direction of March. So March starts out. So this is this is why I'm cautioning you about individual horoscopes. March starts out, the first week of March, we've got a new moon on Wednesday, the 2nd in Pisces. Okay, there is tremendous, powerfully potent, energy in terms of action and social expression and aesthetics. Oh my goodness gracious, this week is really going to be something. All right. On Saturday, March 5th, we are going to have a meetup. All right, many astrologers, you're going to read about it. They're going to go, this is the luckiest day of the year, because the sun and Jupiter, which is one of the sugar daddies in the planetary system. Jupiter is supposed to be fortune. It's fabulous. They are going to meet up. And so there is tremendous abundance potential that week. Mm-hmm. People are going to be, I think generally speaking, it's going to be an optimistic week. People are going to, even more so, and in fact, it's more appropriate for actually planting seeds in March than so much this month, although people are still going to do it anyway. But my point is that this particular pattern that's coming into play on March 5th, if it affects your horoscope personally, mazel tov. This could be an wonderfully lucky time for you, but not necessarily. So that's so my point is that people, if you read this is going to be a really lucky day and you're like, well, nothing happened to me. Well, it's because these things, these patterns are personal. They have a personal impact as well as a general impact. And so I want to tell your listeners that so that they can manage their expectations of what astrology promises, quote unquote.
And I think that's so true, because people will go, I grew up in New York, where I used to read the daily news, and you'd open up and they had your thing for the day. I used to like to read my astrology at the end of the day to kind of put some context into understanding, oh, what was that experience that I had? How did I do with it? Right. And actually, I thank my Aunt Emily for giving me the love of astrology, because she was the one who taught me how to read, the book and how to understand a little more about the different signs. So I think you're absolutely right, Elizabeth. I want to delve into if there are like 2 or 3 planets you think everybody should understand, or their signs. You said it's not just your sun sign. What should people look at? I guess first they start with their birth time.
That's an excellent question. So one thing you can do, everybody can figure this out. Even if you don't know what time you were born, chances are you can know enough about your birth time to find out your moon sign. And let me tell you why. From our perspective on planet Earth, the sun and the moon are the same size. This is amazing when you stop and think about this, because the sun is really ginormous and far away and the moon is small and close, but they're the same size. They can eclipse, and the moon can eclipse the sun. That's a lot of power for a little tiny body. So in the language of astrology, we are alerted that we need to pay attention to the moon, the feminine, night, the reflective qualities, as much as we pay attention to the blazing ego, sun, rah, rah. So the moon reflects the energy of the sun. You need to know your moon sign. For example, okay, I'll talk about the President of the United States.
Okay.
The President of the United States, Joe Biden, is a Scorpio. So he's here to consolidate information and hold power behind the scenes. That has to do with his unique horoscope. But what drives him, the need more than anything else, is his moon, which is in Taurus, which is all about building and maintaining material comfort and security. And you can look at the names of his initiatives and you can see how that need to build something, to build back better. Right. That is a moon in Taurus, and everything's going to be okay. We're going to be comfortable. No drama. This is so when you look at why he does anything, you have to understand that the reigning need is, I want to build something and I want to make everything, I want this status quo the way things are supposed to be, which is a little different than his Scorpio sun. So everybody, get to know your moon sign, because then when you read things about, let's say you're a Cancer and your moon is in Gemini, your sun sign Cancer, and you're like, well, I'm supposed to be caring about people all the time and nurturing. And then you find out, if your moon is in Gemini, well, you need to talk a lot. You need to be the smartest kid in the room. There's a lot of mental energy attached that needs an outlet. That's not at all Cancer.
That is so true. That is so true. I am a Cancer sun, but I am a Capricorn moon, but my Mercury is in Gemini, which does equate for why I started this podcast, why I was a journalist, and why I was the chattiest kid in my classes.
Yes, and why you are a proactive person, because a Cancer moon with all this energy to build security and build a platform for everyone to feel comfortable and connected to home and family, and is driven by the Capricorn moon need to make things happen. Let's accomplish something with this. We don't want to just talk about it. That would be a Cancer moon in Gemini. No, we want to make something happen.
Fascinating. And this is probably why when you look at people in your family and your friends and you say, well, they're all Aries, and they're like, but they're different types of Aries. There's a very strong-headed one, there's kind of more laid back one. So if you don't know your moon sign, you're kind of only looking at half the equation.
Yes, you're looking at a fragment, but the moon is it's extremely important. I like to say it drives the bus. So the more you are in touch with that, I think it's your key to happiness, fulfilling the need of that moon. Like, for you with the moon in Capricorn, if you didn't put anything out into the world to try to accomplish something, you would be miserable, in my opinion. It's like you have all these ideas, they're clever, but if you did nothing with them and you never put it out there, well, that would not work. So we would want to encourage you, if you've got an idea, put it out there. Let's make it happen. You're going to feel so happy that you have done something.
I could not agree more. And starting this conversation is one of those things. So I'm so glad we have. So what are the best ways for people to learn more about themselves? Like, what are there books, websites, places you recommend? Because certainly you are a contributing columnist for Mountain Astrology magazine, where you talk about, a lot of the news makers in the world, but you also have a phenomenal new e-newsletter, which really maps out the details. If anybody's interested in understanding the news cycles and how the different planetary movements are affecting the news and the context behind it, sign up for Elisabeth's email news blast. It is spectacular.
Thank you.
What are ways for people to learn more about themselves personally so they can get really more out of astrology as a tool?
Okay, so astrology is a language, first of all. So it's unreasonable if you don't want to learn Japanese because it's that complicated, then go find an astrologer based on word of recommendations, their education, client referrals. I mean, you go and look for an astrologer the way you would look for any consultant. You want to, if they've written, a lot of astrologers write, read their writing, see if you connect with their voice, see if with the way they present things makes sense to you. I would consult with an astrologer about their horoscope and have them explain it to you in plain English, first of all.
And are there resources? Is there a place that accredits astrologers that you would recommend that people start to look?
This is this is one of the challenges of modern astrology. This is one of the challenges. How do you find a good practitioner? Mountain Astrologer magazine that I mentioned, which is a trade publication. If you don't speak astrology, you're gonna go, what is this? This is Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. So I wouldn't recommend that. One general book that I like about astrology is written by April Elliott Kent. I like this one. Do I have this? Grab it on that I can show this picture if I have it. I'm looking on my desk. What is the one? I'm looking for it. I'm looking. Where is April's book? Oh, here it is. I like this one. I like this book because if I'd written a book about astrology, I would probably have written something like this. It's a cookbook thing. She's a moon in Gemini, so it's packed with information, and it's written at a level that I think somebody who is not a professional can understand. So I like April Elliott Kent's book very much for somebody who doesn't speak astrology. Cafe Astrology is a website that has a ton of information on it that's sort of written at a level that anyone can access. A lot of people are on astro.com because once you get into astro.com has a way where you can calculate charts apparently. And I honestly, I have my own software, so I don't really know that much about it, but a lot of people go into it there. There are a number of astrological organizations if you're serious about learning astrology. There are a lot of, you can go, one of them is ISAR, ISAR. Most of the major American cities have local chapters of NCGR, National Geocosmic Council of Research. They teach classes. That's a place to go where you can actually learn the language to be a serious student. But if you're just starting out, I would find an astrologer who can explain your chart to you in English.
In English, yes. And so we're also very excited and we're thrilled to have you join us just to kind of give a nice context to this. But we're thrilled to announce that you're going to be joining the Year of Love podcast as our weather gal, and that's WHETHER.
Right.
As an ongoing contributor to just give us a hit each week to understand what's coming up in the week ahead, how people can use those patterns to build their life that they can love. Elisabeth, thank you so much for this great framework and understanding. Can't wait to have you join us weekly.
My pleasure. I'm delighted. I have a moon in Gemini, so my reigning need is to be seen as someone who is informed and entertaining. So if I have been informative and entertaining for people listening today, I have fulfilled the reigning need of my horoscope and I am happy.
Oh, that's marvelous. We love that. Well, everybody, we'll post those links that Elisabeth mentioned on our Facebook page. If you have comments, questions, please shout out at us. Go to the yearoflovepodcast.com where you can also subscribe and watch the video of this. Thanks, Elisabeth. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make it a fantastic week. And next week, we'll talk to you. We'll have our big podcast in advance of Valentine's Day, everybody's day that they love.
We'll tell you what kind of day it's going to be. Moon's going to be in, well, I won't tell you right now. You have to listen next week. You have to listen next week and I'll tell you about Valentine's Day.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Make it a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.